All the rolling go, where am I to go? Meet Johnny, where am I to go? For I'm a young and a sailor lad, and where am I to go?
Hello, and welcome to Where Am I to Go podcast. Today we are at probably one of the more unusual museums I have ever been to. This place is unbelievable. I'm excited. We came here a couple of days ago. It is called the Cloud Museum. It's a Model T collection, but so much more. We're here with Johnny Cloud, the owner, and he's going to talk with us today. How are you doing, Johnny?
I'm doing very well.
Good, thank you. I appreciate you taking your time today as we walk through this collection. This is amazing. I'm an old car fanatic myself, and to see all of this is just mind-blowing to me. As you walk through the front gates, he's got a couple of Model Ts mounted up on above the fence before you come on in. This is a lot of outdoor. We're near Yuma, Arizona. We are in Bard, California. And this is an amazing place just by itself. I mean, I'm used to seeing agriculture, but not really to this degree. It's amazing how much of our vegetables like celery and broccoli, cauliflower, lettuce, all of that stuff is being grown here. Do they do that year round? Or?
No, that's just a winter crop. Then we have a summer crop.
What's your summer crop?
It's watermelons, cantaloupes, melons, and cotton, and wheat, and Sudan grass.
Okay. Wow. So you guys are able to farm all year round, even though it gets, 110 degrees all summer long?
12 months a year you're farming here.
Really?
Yeah.
That is amazing. And it's so green down here. I've been through a lot of Arizona, but dropping down here into the Yuma and Southern California area here, it's just amazing how much produce there is. Now, you were a farmer,
Yes,
correct?
I was.
Okay. And what did you grow?
I raised cotton, wheat, and alfalfa.
Okay. Now, I got a question about the cotton, just because I've got a question about the cotton. Do you rotate that crop? Do you rotate that crop out with alfalfa, because alfalfa
Builds up the soil.
And then the cotton depletes, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you do?
We'd grow alfalfa for about 3 years. Then we'd put it in cotton.
For how many years?
Well, for 1 or 2, and whatever fit our rotation. And then we'd grow wheat, and then back to alfalfa. We'd just rotate.
Okay. But alfalfa's a annual crop. It comes back every year.
Alfalfa grows all year long here. We leave it in for about 3 years to build the ground up. It puts a lot of nitrogen in the soil.
Okay, because up where we're from, it's they are always bragging, got 3 cuttings or whatever. You know, some areas get 2 cuttings.
Yeah. We get 7 or 8 cuttings of alfalfa per year.
7 or 8 a year?
Yes.
Holy smokes. That's unbelievable. And so do you have a lot of dairies around here and stuff too? Or just mostly?
They're not local. They're quite a ways away. They transport the hay to them.
Okay. Sorry to get distracted on the farming stuff.
Not a problem.
It's just something I'm kind of interested in also. So anyway, we walk through your front gates. The first thing you notice is a siren going off. I really like that. It goes, woo, 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 and you know somebody's coming through the gate.
That lets me know somebody's coming or leaving.
And then he has a $10 fee to get in per person, which is quite reasonable considering the collection that he has. Now, you say on the front out here that you have possibly the world's largest collection of Model Ts.
Well, I have 125 Model Ts. And I don't know if it's the largest or not, so I put probably. But nobody has disputed it, so I don't know.
And as you walk through, you've got outdoor Model Ts. Most of them are rust-colored at this point in time. You've got like 3 or 4 rows of just different variations of the Model T. I didn't know that there were this many different variations from what I guess would have been considered a panel at that.
Yeah, that's like a delivery van. It's kind of probably a homemade body on it.
And it would have had canvas around the back.
Well, it could, and it just any way a person wanted it.
Okay, and then you've got the regular sedans and two-doors and...
There's the roadsters and tourings and two-door sedans and coupes and trucks and
all different variations of them. It's amazing. And when we were here the other day, you said that all of them run?
all of them. I drove them in here personally. I put them together in my shop, drive them out here and park them, and that's where they sit. And in this climate here, they never seize up, so it's real easy to get them going again.
Really?
Yeah.
The carburetors don't need rebuilt?
I drain the gas out of them so that the carburetors are ready to go when I'm ready.
And do you preserve the carburetors in any way as
I
far
don't do
as
anything to
plastic over them or
Just
just
drain
the air cleaners?
Just drain the gas out.
Just drain the gas out. And all of these are hand crank.
Well, no, the Model Ts before 1919 didn't have starters, but after 1919 they put starters on them.
Okay.
So they all have a crank on the front of them, but after 1919, if you had a good battery, you could start it with a starter.
Okay. I didn't realize what year that they'd started putting the starters in.
Mm-hmm.
They say that the starters is what definitely put the nail in the coffin of the electric vehicles that were available at that time. But, or at least that's the rumor that I've heard.
Could very well be true.
You know, a lot of the ladies and stuff like the electric vehicles just because they could get in them and go immediately. So you've got 125 Model Ts?
Yes.
And you've got the ones here as we first walk in, and then you have the ones inside of your...
a few restored ones.
few restored. Okay. Yeah, Linda.
Which ones did you start with when you first started collecting?
Well, I've got my father's truck in the back building, and that's probably what got me interested in Model Ts.
Awesome.
And then you've started collecting when you were quite young?
I collected about 3 or 4 Model Ts when I was in grade school and high school, and I started chasing the girls, and I sold them, and I always regretted it. And so then after I made a living and farmed for several years, and the lettuce companies come along, and they like my ground better than I do, so I leased it to them, and I didn't have anything to do, so I started collecting every Model T part I could find, started putting them together, and this is what I've got.
And it's just amazing what you've got. So do you have plans on restoring a lot of these that you have in your lineup out here that are rust colored?
I don't have any plans on restoring them. I like them this way. You don't have to keep them clean or anything.
Well, that's a true statement. And you still get to see exactly what they were and what they look like. Now, you've got a lot of extra stuff in here, too. You've got a bus over here that was converted into a motor home that's really pretty cool. You can...
It was actually a truck chassis that they made a motor home on it. I believe some company in Los Angeles made them because there used to be another one here in the valley that looked exactly like it.
Now, that's on a Model A, right?
It's a Model A truck chassis.
Okay. And it's really well decked out inside. We stepped in there. He's got it open so you can see what the motorhome looked like, and it's got a gas stove and a sink and
all of the original equipment is still in it.
Okay. From when it was going down the road.
Yep.
And then he's got old gas pumps. He's got a couple of buggies out here. He's got I'd call it a steam shovel, but
Well, it's just it's a shovel. It had a boom and a bucket. It could be a drag line, or you could put this boom on it and make a shovel out of it.
okay. And a couple of tractors and a couple of Caterpillar crawlers and
I've got a lot of Fordson tractors, and some of them with special equipment on them. One of them that has tracks on it, a Fordson tractor with an aftermarket set of tracks on it.
okay.
I got a Fordson tractor with a winch attachment on it. I've got a Fordson tractor with a grader attachment on it. And I got a Fordson tractor with a road roller attachment on it.
Oh,
And
wow.
I got a Fordson tractor with a Gleaner combine on it. One of your first self-propelled combines in 1924.
Really? That's a pretty neat collection. You don't see a lot of that that attachments on them. Cool. And then you've got a couple of old C cabs. Were those Model Ts, the old C cab trucks?
These particular ones were, but the other companies made them look almost like that. But the C cabs was made from 1924 and 25. And then in 26, 27, they made this type here, the closed cab truck.
Okay. And the C cab had what? It had a different style of roof on it.
It had a canvas roof on them.
Okay.
There's one down here that's got it. Basically, has it on it.
Okay. And so the Model Ts, when I was walking around before, I noticed that you had several of them that were listed for like $460 new, $500 new.
Well, when they first started out, I got a 14 in there. It was $500 and something dollars.
Okay.
And as I kept mass producing them, in 1926 and 27, they got down to $380 for some of the open cars.
Wow. Now, to put that into perspective, I had to look this up. That would be equivalent to about $15,000 now, the 500.
That could be.
So that gives you an idea of where car prices have gone. But the Model T was always the working man's car.
Oh, it was a poor man's car. It was one of
the Volkswagen.
They were one of the lowest budget cars you could buy.
Okay.
But it got everybody to drive it.
Right. Which was a good thing, I guess, because people started being able to move from place to place.
See that C cab down there has the top on it?
There we
That's
go.
what they had on them.
Okay. Yep. I see the canvas on it. Now the Model Ts. Tell me a little bit about the construction of the Model Ts. I've heard different things, like Ford would order the engines coming in on a pallet that he would take the pallet and then use for the top or some of that type of stuff.
Well, I've always heard that too. They would, some of the parts, he'd have them delivered with a certain size crate, and they would use the wood for the floorboards in the cars.
Okay.
And
then they had to be constructed out of oak or what?
Yeah,
what
it had
kind
to be
of
a certain kind of wood. It had to be a certain size so they could use it as floorboards. They didn't throw it away.
And all the Model Ts had four-cylinder engines.
They all had 4-cylinder, 20 horsepower engines.
Okay. And how fast did they go with the 20 horsepower engine?
Down the road 35. If you really speed it up, 40 miles an hour. But
really?
You didn't want to run wide open like that all the time.
Okay. And I hear that they're kind of a challenge to drive.
They're pretty simple. You just got to learn how to use your feet to shift the transmission. It's basically an automatic transmission that you shift with your feet.
So it doesn't have a gear shift?
It doesn't have a gear shift.
Okay, so how do you shift it with your...
Well,
you got 2 or 3 pedals for
you
the
got
shifting?
3 pedals. The pedal on the left, when you press it all the way down, it's spring-loaded. It wants to come back up on by itself.
Okay.
You got to hold it down tight, and that's low gear.
So you drive with it held to the floor?
When you're in low gear.
Okay.
And then, when you get your speed you want it, you let it up all the way, and it goes into high gear.
Okay.
And halfway down is neutral. And when you push it down halfway and you push the center pedal in, that makes reverse. And the other pedal is just a brake pedal. So you had 2 speeds forward and a reverse.
Okay, and the throttle?
The throttle is up on the steering column.
Okay, so you don't have a gas pedal?
No.
Okay. Then how did you, okay, so you put it midway in order to get it into neutral.
Yes.
And it had to be in neutral in order to hand crank it.
Okay. When you pull the emergency brake pedal back, it holds the pedal halfway down. It has a cam that holds the pedal halfway down, so you can start your car and let it idle with just sitting there without you being in it.
Okay. And then from there, you go ahead and put it all the way to the floor, then bring it all the way back up if you're going forward.
You take the emergency brake pedal, release it, push the pedal down, and you go forward.
Okay, and so you had cruise control on these things
Right.
because you had like a tractor
Yeah.
throttle, and as you pulled it down, it would lock into place so you could...
Right.
Okay, now you also had to mess with the timing on these, correct?
Okay. In order to start it, you had a lever on the steering column that you had to push it up, and it retarded the timing so that it wouldn't kick.
Okay,
And if you forgot to retard it, that's where most people broke their arms.
okay. Because it would kick back like
will-
like a Kickstarter on a motorcycle.
it'll-
Sometimes it'll jump you up pretty
It'll
hard.
kick backwards and run faster backwards than it will forward.
The engine will run back.
No, it doesn't run, but it turns backwards when it
Okay,
kicks
right, okay.
faster than it would forward.
Okay.
And that crank comes around, hits your arm, and breaks it if you're in the way.
Yeah, I've heard those stories. I've never actually had the opportunity to hand crank one to see just.
Well,
Then there's special ways that you kind of hold it so that if it snaps back, it doesn't break your thumbs and stuff too.
Well,
right?
I've heard that story a lot all my life, but I don't believe that. If you're pulling up no matter how you're holding the crank, it has so much power it pulls it right out of your hand, and your hand gets away from it. But if you're trying to crank it all the way around, that crank comes around and hits you so quick it'll break your arm.
Okay. Dang. Sounds about half dangerous.
Well, it can be if you forget to retard it.
Okay, and then once it's running, then you go ahead and advance your timing.
As soon as it's running, you advance the timing, and you don't have to mess with the timing after that.
Okay, so it's not something you adjust as you're going down the road.
If you're pulling up a hill and it's slugging a little bit, sometimes you can retard the timing and give it a little more power. So
Okay.
it'll pull up better. But most of the time, you never have to touch it.
Okay. And the other question I have is a question that I'm not going to ask you because I can't remember what it was. Boy, this gets bad. Now the Model A's, you've got a few Model A's in here.
I've got 49 Model A's in here.
Okay, so you've got half the collection of Model A's that you have of the Model T's.
Well, a little less than half.
But close.
Yeah.
And now the Model A's, they still had the hand crank also, correct?
Well, the Model A's, the lug wrench, one end was the crank. So you could, if your battery was low, you could always crank your car and start it.
With the lug wrench.
Yeah. One end is the lug wrench, and one end of the handle is the crank.
Okay, so it still had the kind of U shape to it.
Right.
Okay. And then it just, you didn't keep the crank, on the T's, did you keep the crank in the front all the time, or did you remove that also?
The Model T's, the crank was built into the car. It stayed in all the time.
Okay.
The Model A's, you put it under the seat or wherever you wanted to carry it, and it was the lug wrench and the crank.
Okay. And how about the tires on these? Can you still get tires?
You can get every tire almost made from certain companies. There's a couple of companies that handle them.
Okay.
But they're kind of expensive.
And the tires didn't last real long on the...
Tires weren't very good in the old days.
What would you get, 300-400 miles out of them?
Well, I saw an advertisement for a tire, an old advertisement that says 5,000 miles.
Okay. Well, that's...
Which is quite a while.
I was going to say, that's quite a ways.
For one of these.
I was thinking that they didn't even get that. Now, they also made solid wheels for some of these.
Well, the Model T's never had solid rubber tires.
Okay.
But the fire departments would a lot of times put them on their cars so that they didn't have to worry about having a flat.
Okay. I thought I'd seen some in here that had...
Well, I do have some of the tires like the fire department used.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another interesting point. Mm-hmm. Okay. And did the Model A also have a bigger motor than the Model T?
The Model T had 20 horsepower, and the Model A had 40 horsepower.
Okay, so it just about
doubled the horsepower.
Okay. And the Model A's go quite a bit faster, or
not
they just
really.
had more power for
They just
climbing?
had more power. They could, if you run one real hard, you could get up about 50 or 55, but that's really pushing it.
Okay. And when did they start production of the Model T?
The Model T started in 1909, and they produced Model Ts till 1927.
Wow, so they had a 20-year run.
From what I understand, they closed the factory down for a while and retooled for the Model A's. They laid everybody off, retooled for the Model A's, and hired everybody back and started making the Model A's in 1928.
Okay.
And they made them from 28 to 31, and they made 5 million of them.
Wow.
And the Model T's, they made about 16 million of them.
Okay. So they're really, how many are still left in circulation? Do they have a registry or anything?
I have no idea.
Okay. I know some cars have registries.
They probably do, but I don't
clubs
know.
and stuff, but, Okay, now you've got all of these vehicles here. Do you also, do you sell any parts?
I help people with parts if I have extras. I won't take them off my cars.
I can't say as I blame you. And do you end up buying a lot of parts if somebody calls you up and says, I've got a garage full of Model T or Model A parts?
That's my problem. I buy everything.
Okay. I guess that could be a problem. Okay, well, let's take a walk, and as you see something that you find really unique that needs to be pointed out, please point it out to me.
Well, this...
What is the apparatus on the back of this one?
Well, those are all fuel tanks from service stations.
Oh, okay.
Where you buy your bulk oil.
Okay.
When I was young, you could buy reclaimed oil for 10 cents a quart.
reclaimed. That was
that
oil
be-
that had been changed?
That had been changed, and they cleaned it and re-cleaned it and used it over again.
Well, now they didn't have oil filters at that point in time.
They didn't have oil
They didn't put
filters.
oil filters on the Fords until when? Probably.
I think around, I'm not sure, it was somewhere in the 30s or late 30s or 40s.
And that was an addition that you could put on.
Well, some of them I think started coming with them.
Okay. Okay.
This thing here is a boom that you could mount on the back of any truck, and for a tow boom, for a wrecker,
Right.
to haul your car in if it broke down.
Okay.
It's
And
hand cranked to operate the winch on it. You got
okay.
a crank there, you turn.
We went to the Recovery Museum in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and they had some of the very first tow apparatuses, and they were pretty amazing.
And this truck right here has a dump bed on it
I was looking at this. This is really intriguing.
that you have to hand crank to raise it and lower it. It's all done by hand.
Oh, you've got it operating. How cool is that? Wow. Yeah, he's got a hand crank that goes through a small gear to a bigger gear to a half gear that raises and lowers the dump bed. That is cool. I wonder how hard that is to lift when you got a half ton of gravel in the
I've
back.
never had it loaded, so I don't know. I have this little short crank on to demonstrate it, but I'm sure it had a lot longer crank, so you'd have more leverage.
And this is kind of a museum, I'm assuming, that people can kind of touch a little bit and,
Oh, yeah.
and look. And
They're not going to scratch my paint on these rusty cars.
And you've kind of broke the mold. I heard Henry Ford said that you could have it in any color you wanted as long as it was black. But I'm seeing a lot of kind of brown colored ones.
Yeah,
here.
I broke the mold.
Now they did have other colors though, did they not?
In 1926, they had 4 different colors,
Okay.
but until then, they were mostly black.
Okay. And now you've got a police cruiser here.
Well, this
That's
is,
a what, 1940?
no, it's a 1936. It was the police chief's car in Somerton, Arizona in 1936.
Okay. It's a cool looking car too. And it had the V8 in it.
Yes,
And I see the siren on the front.
and the red light.
Oh, the red light looks like a spotlight. But did it flash?
No, it just red.
Just red.
Stayed on red.
Okay. We got Marvin Memphorals cemetery lettering.
Well, that hood is off of a different vehicle. This truck has a real long bed on it.
It does. It's what,
And-
14 foot?
Probably, maybe 20 foot. It was, this truck was used in a lumber yard to deliver lumber to construction sites.
Okay.
So they extended the frame and extended the bed, so it's approximately, I'd say close to 20 foot long.
Okay. Yeah, I took a picture of this when we were here before because of that. Now, I got a question over here. You've got an accessory. I'm assuming it's an accessory. You've
Yeah.
got 3 jugs sitting on the running board that are all half circle shaped, kind of I guess it would have been an oblong circle. And you've got 3 jugs here. I'm assuming that one of them's gas. Is the other one oil and water?
That's right. They're
Okay.
running board cans to carry extra water, gas, and oil with you. And you just bolted them onto they clamped onto your running board.
Okay. And you only had a gallon of gas, a gallon of water, and I guess a gallon of oil. But now, were the Model Ts self-oiling, or in the beginning did you have to get out and oil them every
No, they were
10 miles or so?
self-oiling.
Okay, because I know some cars back in the day, maybe it was before the Model T had started that.
The Chevrolets didn't have an oil system to their valves.
Right.
So you had to oil the valves once in a while on those. But the Model Ts, they didn't have an oil pump, but everything was self-oiling.
Okay, that's interesting because
They didn't have a water pump or an oil pump.
So how did they just cooled by
They call it thermal siphoning. The hot water rises,
right?
and as it cools in the radiator, it goes down, so it circulates.
Okay, now in areas like this where it's so hot in the summer, did that cause a lot of overheating problems?
Well,
or-
the Model T always ran boiling, so all you had to do is just keep adding a little water to it once in a while. It had cast iron pistons in them, so it wouldn't
Okay.
melt the piston, so it just keep on running.
So you could run them real hot.
Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I never realized that. Now the Model A, same thing.
Well, no, the Model A had a water pump
Okay.
and aluminum pistons, and it would keep pretty cool.
Okay. I'd never even thought about being able to run them that hot. So was the radiator pressurized on the Model T?
None of the early cars were pressurized.
Okay. So that you didn't have the ability to overheat with the boiling radiator and all that.
Well, if it overheated, it's got an overflow pipe and it'd push a little of it out.
Okay. Now, we walk further back in. You've got several buildings that you've got lots of antiques, different car-related items, and also home-related items. But as we're walking into this first one, you've got a really nice line of old boat motors. And boat motors, and then you have a big, is that an air?
Well,
that's a hit and miss?
It's a hit and miss. It's a 25 horsepower Fairbanks Morris hothead diesel engine. Weighs about
Okay.
4,000 to 5,000 pounds.
And it ran off a diesel.
It runs off a diesel.
Okay. And it's got some pretty massive flywheels on it.
Yeah, they'd say they're 4 to 5 foot in diameter.
And what did they use that for? Do you
This
know?
particular one, they ran a belt to a pump and irrigated a farm with it.
Okay. And that's another thing that's really cool about this museum is almost every person that comes through the gate, you greet and talk and answer questions. When we were here the other day, I think you stopped by to say hi 2 or 3 times.
Well, I try to,
It's
if anybody has questions, I try to answer them for them.
That's good. Yeah. It's nice to have that personal touch. Then we come on in here. You've got a couple of hand crank coffee grinders, a piano, one-arm bandit, wood cook stove, just a lot of your household type items, along with a really nice display again of hood ornaments and tools and some of that kind of stuff. And then a kitchen setup, which is really cool. He's got some old beaters in here and cast iron cornbread ovens and presses and scales, pans. It's just a really nice setup here. A little doctor's area, dentist, doctors, whatever this is.
This is a dentist office, and that cast iron chair was a real early dentist chair. It's supposed to have a headrest, which it's missing, but it leans back, and that's where the dentist would work on you.
Boy, it looks to me like you'd be just about as anxious to get out of that chair as you would the dentist's office.
Well, you probably will.
Yeah, this is really neat. And we've got he's got several other buildings here that are just absolutely fantastic. Old machinery. That's a pretty cool old generator that you've got. Oh, and you've got some glass batteries.
Well, this is what they call a 32-volt Delco system.
Okay.
Before they had electricity out in the country, you could buy a 32-volt Delco system. It came with a wind charger. And it came,
Which is right behind us. The wind charger's
yes.
up here.
And it came with a generator here to charge your batteries if the wind wasn't blowing. And these are 32-volt light bulbs. You hooked all your batteries together and wired your house up for 32 volts.
Okay. And these are all glass batteries.
Right.
A lot of people have probably never even heard of or seen a glass battery. Now, that only, how many volts
There's
were each
2
one of
volts in
those?
each one. And
2 volts, okay.
And when you hooked them all together, there's 2 missing, but there was 32 volts.
Okay. And then your generator ran off of kerosene?
Gasoline.
Gasoline?
Yeah. And
Now, the Model T, did it run off of kerosene,
no,
diesel, and
gasoline.
just gasoline?
Yeah.
A lot of your tractors would run off of just about anything you'd stick in the tank.
Well, the Model T would run off of it too if you got it when it got it warmed up, but then it was hard to start with it.
Okay. And then you've got an old Maytag washing machine here that has a little motor on it. They used to be able to run the Maytag ringer washers off of gasoline.
Yeah.
Had a little kickstart like the motorcycle, and it would agitate. And
These still run good and work very well.
this one out here does? Mm-hmm. I find it amazing that you don't have problems with dust blowing into your engines and some of that kind of stuff.
I get some of it in there. It doesn't do them any good, but they still work.
Huh. And then we come into another building. He's got a hand crank Victrola, an old oak icebox in here.
This was my grandmother's Singer sewing machine made in 1892.
Really? Oh yeah. And it's a treadle machine.
And this rocker right here is a real early butter churn.
Okay. And this is probably 2 foot, 2.5 foot round, kind of oblong. And then how did it work? It just you pulled on the handle and it slid back and forth on a rocker.
Yeah. You put the cream in there and you just rocked it back and forth until it turned to butter.
How long?
I don't know.
I bet you pulled back and forth on that handle for 45 minutes before you got your butter.
This is a commercial apple peeler.
Oh, okay.
It peels the apple and cores it.
Yep, I can see how that would work. It's got a little razor blade that kind of works its way around the apple and it spins. And I'm sure a lot of people have seen the apple peeler cores that they have nowadays that you can use for canning apples or making applesauce. But this one here is a lot bigger and a lot more detailed. That is really cool. And now that was your grandma's also?
No, that wasn't. I purchased that.
And he's got this sitting on top of an old Hoosier or kitchen cabinet that probably has the flour bin and sifter and all of that kind of stuff coming down.
It's in there.
These things are really cool. Those tops slid out to where you had a lot of working space.
Some of them did.
In the old days, they didn't necessarily have kitchen cabinets as we think of them nowadays.
This telephone here, I tell everybody it came out of the Yuma County Jail. And all the prisoners used it for their call. So I had the first cell phone in Yuma County.
Okay. You know, another thing I'm kind of interested in that I saw the other day is this little furnace down here. He's got a furnace that's probably 18 inches by 2 foot high that's got a lot of high temperature.
This was in a gold mine up north of us here, and they melted gold, I guess, in it.
Is this for like doing the assays and stuff, or is it for making?
It was for making small gold bricks, gold, whatever.
Okay, it's a really neat looking little furnace, and
this one here has 3 buckets that turn on it with burners underneath them, and I think that was out of the same mine, and that was to cook the mercury out of it.
Oh, that had to have been a great job for longevity.
This Model T right here, the old gentleman that made this was kind of like I am. He was cutting up firewood. He put a Model T motor and a saw blade on the Model T frame, and he was cutting firewood. And he also had a barbecue grill on the front so he could cook something to eat while he was working.
Just take the wood right from the back.
Yeah.
Huh? Wow. That's kind of interesting. Now, that's something else, too, that I don't know if a lot of people realize, and maybe I'm wrong with what I think, but they took a lot of these old Model Ts, Model A's both, and probably the Chevys and everything else. They took the motors out of those and used those for all kinds of different...
Everything. Running saws and
water pumps and
everything.
Farm machinery. I've seen hay stackers that they turned the engine around somehow or another and put forks on the front so it had weight in the back for them to pick up their hay and put it into the piles.
My grandfather and my father had an old hay baler. It was an Ann Arbor 3-wire stationary hay baler. And my uncle was pretty mechanical, and he got some truck axles and put on it, and he put a Dodge motor on the front, would operate the baler, and they could go through the field and bale hay with it.
Really? Mm-hmm. It's amazing the ingenuity of some of those guys in back in the day. And I don't know what's happened to a lot of that, because you don't see a lot of that farmerizing. Is that what I want to call it? Or re-engineering?
Too much stuff available you can buy that you can use.
I guess. And then we walked into this other room here, and he's got several, I would say, restored. Looks like most of them are Model A's, aren't they?
These are all Model T's in this room.
Oh, they're all Model T's, okay. Nothing like the old Uga horn. That one's hand-operated.
Yep.
That's pretty cool.
It's a Claxton, they call them.
It's like the old toys that we had where we had the little Teflon thing that we'd pull up. It's got the little gears on it, and as you push it down, it rolls. And this is in an old panel wagon. C-cab again, right?
Right.
And did it come with the metal on the side, or
Yeah,
was that an added thing?
This was probably an aftermarket body that somebody made for them,
Okay.
and it was just a delivery van.
And what was the purpose for the
The expanded.
expandable?
Well, most early Model Ts didn't have a door on the driver's side, and you could do these expansion racks that clamped onto the running board for putting more luggage in and stuff to carry stuff in.
Okay, they didn't have a driver's door.
There's no door on this side.
I see that. How come?
Well, the way the wood construction of the body was, it was a lot more difficult to put a door on this side.
Okay, I've never even noticed. Now,
In 26 and 27, they put doors on the driver's side, but the early cars didn't have them.
that's so interesting. That explains something to me. Have you ever watched Mayberry, Andy Griffith's show?
Yeah.
Have you ever noticed that Andy Griffith, every time he gets into that car, even though it's got a driver's door, he slides in from the passenger side? I was watching that and I'm going, why in the world does that guy get in on Barney's side every time and slides across?
He probably had a Model T, so he was used to getting in from that side.
That's interesting. And then you've got a whole bunch of parts, old carburetors, horns. Now, were those horns really common? How come I've never seen one?
Yeah, they're pretty common.
That's really interesting.
See here? Here's one here. Here's one here.
Oh yeah, that is. Wow.
Here's another one here. They were pretty common.
That is too interesting. A bunch of magnetos
Magnetos.
and lights, old jars, hood these here are
Oilers.
Oilers.
Yeah.
Okay, they look kind of like fuel filters.
Well, they're glass and they're full of oil, and you can adjust them to drip oil into a bearing.
Okay.
And it'd be full of oil, and you'd have to fill up oil every week or so.
Like the old hit and miss motors had those. Okay, did the Model T run something?
No, Model Ts didn't have them,
Okay.
but farm machinery and machinery.
Okay, and he's got plaques on a whole lot of these cars in this area and in another one that it tells you that it's a Ford. The model is a TT closed cab truck, and the TT was the bigger size truck.
That was a one-ton truck.
The 1-ton truck. And the year 26, 27, price new was $515. And then it says this truck belonged to my father in Yuma, Arizona. So this one here is that's yours.
That's the starting of the museum.
That right there is the starting.
And starting from this gray truck down to the yellow one, this is all the different body styles that Ford made in 1926 and 27. They're all here.
So these here are all 26 and 27s.
It's a one-ton truck, a four-door sedan, a Tudor, a coupe, a touring, a roadster, and a roadster pickup.
Wow. That's amazing. And these bikes. I saw these the other day.
These bikes, this particular one had no pedals. You just push it and ride it.
Right.
They used a lot of them on the boardwalk in Coney Island,
Okay.
and they were invented in the 1820s. This one was probably made later. And this,
And they all have metal wheels.
well, they're all made in the 1800s.
Wood and metal. It's just like a buggy
Yeah.
tire.
And this particular one here was made by a blacksmith near Chicago, and he made 8 of them. And this is the only one left in existence, and it's one of your first chain drive bicycles.
And when he says chain drive, I was highly intrigued by the chain. It's like a combine chain. It's a heavy chain.
It's the old slow-speed farm chain.
Okay.
And this red one here was made in the 1860s in England. It's called a bone crusher. And the high wheelers were made in the late 1800s.
And why is this called the bone crusher?
I don't know why they give it that name, but that's what they call it.
Okay, and this one, the bone crusher, it has pedals on the front wheel, much like a tricycle
Right.
has, and it's got a little friction brake that operates from up on the handlebars that comes against the back wheels.
When you twist the handlebars, it puts the brake on. But it has a very good spring on the seat to take a lot of the shock.
Oh, it does. It's got like a buggy spring on it. Mm-hmm. Wow. These things are just too cool. He's got too much cool stuff here, doesn't he?
Probably a bone crusher because it about broke your back riding it.
And these high wheelers, have you ridden these?
No, I haven't. I don't bounce as good as I used to, so I decided not to ride it.
A few years ago, I had a friend that had one of these, and I decided I was going to try and ride it. Getting up on it is a challenge like you would not believe. Once you finally get up there, you have to keep riding it because you can't figure out how to get off the damn thing. It's the wheel.
Yeah.
You got to pedal on the wheel, and it just keeps going. And there's no way to quit pedaling and really let it coast without losing your balance. And I bit it pretty good. It was fun while I was riding, but that seized.
Here's a truck, a pedal toy up here with the front grill on it. It's made in the 30s. You can kind of date them from the grills.
Right.
This one was made in the 30s. That one was made in the 50s.
And they're the old pedal cars.
Yeah, pedal cars.
Those things are really worth a lot right now, it seems. Man, there's so much stuff in here. Okay, so what is this piece here?
This is a mortise tool for making mortise joints on your, when you're putting your dresser drawers together and stuff,
Right.
the little square deals. This cuts the square hole in them.
Oh, it's operated with the big pedal.
It needs some oil and it's getting stiff. But you cut one side of the hole and then you cut the other side. By twisting this over here and cut the other side.
Okay.
And it cuts a square.
And then you can put your pieces together, like on the old wooden boxes and stuff.
Wooden dresser drawers and stuff had a lot of them.
Okay, right. And then this is a
service station. This is full of gas.
okay.
And some businesses would have these. They'd wheel it out the street, put some gas in your car, wheel it back in. They didn't have to have a tank in the ground.
Okay. And then he's got several of the old
Visible
gas
pumps.
that you'd go ahead and put how much gas you wanted in it, then it would gravity feed down, and you could see the gallons inside of the glass globe.
Mostly, you'd fill it up all the way to the top.
Okay.
And it has an overflow pipe, so it won't fill above the zero. And then you drain down how many gallons you want.
Oh, okay. You didn't put how many gallons you wanted. Okay. That makes more sense, because it starts with the numbers at the top. And Come on, Loren, get your head together. Wow.
Here's some bear traps here.
Those are cool.
And then there's a wolf trap and coyote traps and all kinds of traps.
You got more traps out here, too.
A few.
And then you've got a massive set of scales. Those things are really cool.
I've never seen another set like them.
No.
They are big.
And what would have that been used for?
You know, I don't know. Just anything you need a scale for, I guess.
That is interesting. I guess you'd have to know how much the thing on the other side weighed.
Well, you had to have weights to put on one side to weigh
on
it.
one side to. And then you've got a blacksmith shop in here with several anvils and dies. Lots and lots of the hardy
Tongs.
tools and tongs, hand crank drill, and several of the sharpening stones, big bellows.
And there's that piece of cast iron, that big thing over there at the end. That's a rim shrinker for shrinking the wagon wheel rims.
Right. And there was a process to that.
Yeah.
You had to you'd get your wood wheel all made, and then you would.
And usually this particular one, the wheel would already be made.
Right.
But it would get loose.
Okay.
Okay. So a lot of people would soak the wood up with water to swell them up so they'd be tight. But as soon as it dried, it'd get loose again. So the proper way to fix this, take it to the blacksmith shop. He'd heat a section. He'd put it in there. They'd clamp it one side, clamp the other, and then pull it together, make it smaller in diameter.
Would he cut it first?
No. Do it while it's white hot. The metal would just...
It would shrink
Shrink.
without getting a little lump in
Oh,
there.
it'd
Then
get a
go
lump
thump,
in it,
thump,
but-
thump, thump, thump.
You're not going to fill it on a rough ground.
I guess not.
And then he would heat the thing, the rim, in a big fire so it would swell up.
Right.
Put it back on the wood and cool it with water, and it'd be tighter than thunder.
Right. Yeah. They did the same thing with trains.
Yeah, the outside rim.
They'd get the outside rim super hot, which would expand, and when they put it on and cooled it, it'd shrink it right on down and hold it tight. And what is this? That's we've got a handle with a whole bunch of little metal rods coming down, and they're only separated by about 2 inches, I guess, going all the way around the top of a barrel.
This is to seal the lids on your 5-gallon metal cans. It seals the flaps in, and then you go down to the can.
Instead of trying to beat them back down with your hammer like I always try
You
and
couldn't
do.
get them tight with your hammer like that. You got to squeeze them all at once.
I've never seen one of those.
Oh.
That is really a neat thing. Then you got a whole line of the old Maytag kickstart washing machines.
Well, a few of them are kickstart.
Oh, I guess
some
there
of them
are some electric.
The kickstarts, the electric, had them in the cities, but out in the country, when you didn't have electricity, you had to buy them with a gas motor. So you
And
could
there
wash
wasn't a
those.
lot of electricity till the 30s out on a lot of these homesteads.
Well, we didn't get it till in the 40s, late 40s.
Oh,
out
really?
here.
Okay, now we come into another big barn that has a lot of collective cars in here.
Well, this first car here is just like Bonnie and Clyde was driving. It's a 1934 Ford four-door sedan.
And
It's just like Bonnie and Clyde got shot in one, just
Right.
like that.
and it has a V8,
It has the V8,
the old flathead.
right?
Okay. And how many horsepower was this flathead?
85 horsepower.
Okay. Now, were you aware that Clyde wrote a letter to Ford
I've heard of that.
and told him that he really appreciated him making the best car in the world because they were the fastest and the best getaway car that he could get, and if he ever had a chance to steal a car, it was going to be a Ford?
This piece of machinery here is a Stirling hot air engine.
Okay, now explain that for us.
Okay. What this particular one is, it's a water pump. This particular motor came out of a house in New York. They pumped water into the tank on top of the house so they'd have water pressure on it. Probably a really wealthy person. And this motor runs from nothing but the heat from your fire.
Okay.
It has no fuel other than the heat.
Okay, so you build a fire down in the
It's
bottom.
got a firebox in the bottom. You build a fire in there. You drain the water out of it here and make sure there's no moisture inside the cylinder. And then you turn it and it'll run from just the heat.
Just from the heat. And there's enough there to be able to pump.
Pump the water. And
Wow.
it'll run all day long on just heat.
Okay, now what's the apparatus above the firebox that makes it work that way?
Heat rises.
Right.
Hot expands.
Okay.
I don't exactly understand completely how it works, but it works.
Okay. I've heard of the Stirling engines and I've never really.
Restroom around?
In that building right over there with all the wheels on it, at the very farthest one over there in the back corner.
Okay, thank you.
I'll be back here. Okay, so yeah, simple Stirling motor. They make those little fans that go on top of wood stoves.
They make
and stuff.
fans. They made all kinds of things, but this is a water pump, and they made different sizes. This is one of the smaller ones. They made them. This only has about a 4-inch bore, and I've seen some with a 12-inch bore.
Now, did they ever use them in any automotive applications?
No, they're too heavy and too bulky.
Okay.
But they're very low power torque. But
Okay.
they can just run all day long on a very little fuel. One of the most efficient engines ever made.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about them. I just have never. I don't know if I've ever really seen or talked to anybody that's operated one. Now, do you run this every once in a while? Just
I've
for the
never
heck of
run it. The gentleman I got it from used to demonstrate it at the engine shows they had around here, and I
Okay.
know it runs good. I've seen it running.
That's too interesting. Okay, and we've got a bunch of different. You got things other than Ford in here.
Yeah, here's a Rio right here. It's a 1928 Rio, and Oldsmobile made the Oldsmobile car, and from what I understand, he sold it or lost it to General Motors.
Right.
So he couldn't use the name anymore. So he used his initials, REO, Ransom Eli Oldsmobile, and he made the Rio car.
Right.
And they quit making the car in the 30s, but they kept making trucks in the 50s or 60s, and they sold out.
Okay, and I've read some different things on Olds, and it seems to me like he wasn't involved in the Rio company himself for a real long time, but I don't remember all the history.
I really don't know all the history, but that's what I've...
But this is where REO Speedwagon came from too.
Right.
And you've got a Ford two-door 36.
36 flatback. They made this is one of the cheapest Fords you could buy. It was flat in the back.
Uh-huh.
The other 36 that I have out there has they call it a humpback. It has a trunk built into the back of it.
And what did it have for it looks like it's got a vinyl
All of the
cover
early
in it.
cars had vinyl tops on them.
Okay.
All of them. Even this one has it. All of them.
Really?
Sure.
I guess I've never paid that much attention.
They didn't have stamps big enough to press them out, stamp them out. And this Model T right here is kind of rare. It's a center door sedan. You get in the center to get in the front seat and the back seat.
Really?
Yep.
It also looks different, I mean, as far as the shape and some of that.
Well, that's
too,
a good cold weather car. It'd keep you warm in there.
Okay. Now, did they have heaters in the old Model
They
Ts
didn't.
or A's?
You could buy an aftermarket exhaust heater and put in them.
Okay.
Both of them, the Model A and the Model Ts, didn't have heaters.
Okay. Have you ever seen the vacuum cleaners that were made for these?
Vacuum cleaners.
Yeah. I did a podcast at the Museum of Clean in Pocatello, Idaho, and they had a vacuum cleaner that you would hook up to your exhaust pipe, and as the
It'd make it
as the exhaust would come through, it would create a vacuum, and then you could vacuum out the interior of your car.
Never seen one, never heard of one.
I may have a picture of it. Let me see if I can find the picture, and I'll show it to you when we're done here.
This is a 1928 Dodge.
Okay.
And then here's a bunch of
14T pickup.
and then here's a bunch of Model A Fords,
Okay.
restored ones.
They're all such good-looking
And
cars.
right here is
Oh,
this is a Ford 60 horsepower engine.
okay.
Most of the Fords had 85 horsepower, but in 37, 38, and 39, you had an option. You could buy a car with a 60 horsepower. But most people didn't like it because it'd go faster in second gear and it wouldn't high gear. It didn't have enough torque.
Okay, and then you've got another flathead.
Yeah, that's about a
And
50 model.
what's the one there in the
That's
front?
a Hemi.
I was going to say that the valve covers on that look Hemi-ish.
That's out of a Dodge or a DeSoto in the early 50s, in the 50s.
Okay, and the DeSotos were running the Hemi also. Huh? Okay. Yeah.
This is a Model T Ford motor with a 1928 Chevy head on it to make a hot rod out of it.
Okay. And again, you see your three pedals. Here you can see the three pedals on the transmission to see how they work. Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool. Okay, so what kind of horsepower was this thing putting
You know, I really don't know, but it raised it up quite a bit.
Well, it's running dual carbs.
Well, they made an adapter to put the head onto the motor,
Okay.
and you could get a thinner or thicker adapter, make more compression, but the Model T bearings wouldn't hold too much.
I was going to say the compression on a lot of these old vehicles was only like 8 to 1,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
it's not very high.
Okay.
Huh?
It's been sitting here long?
Probably about 15 years.
I don't remember it.
Imagine that. You'd not see something in this collection.
I've looked at it a few times.
Those seats over there on the wall are off of old farm equipment.
Right.
And these down here at this end here, these are made out of cast iron. They're the more valuable ones and harder to find, the early ones.
And then you've got pedal cars and wagons and tractors, pedal tractors and all that kind of stuff hanging up above. Boy, some of these cars are so pretty. You drive these much, or you just...
This is the only one I keep licensed. It's a 1931 Deluxe Roadster. And I drive it in the parade every year in Yuma.
Okay.
And this is a 1922 Studebaker.
Oh, really?
Right
Okay.
there. And this is a 1922 Chevrolet over here.
Okay.
And that's original paint and seats are still on that car. It's been in the barn all these years.
Wow. It's got the little Chevy bow tie on the front.
Right.
Now, what's the story with the radiator cap on this one? He's got a...
These are aftermarket radiator caps, and most of them they got a coil, but a lot of them had a little temperature gauge in here. It would show the temperature in there.
Okay. Okay. And so those were aftermarket. You
Yes,
could go ahead and...
they were aftermarket.
Okay. A lot of people run them, or...
Oh, yeah. And then here's a 1930 Chrysler.
Okay.
This is a 1928 Chevy Cabriolet. A Cabriolet is almost the same as a Roadster, except the Roadsters don't have roll-up windows. The Cabriolet has roll-up windows.
Okay.
And the top folds down just like a Roadster, and the post on the back of the door that the window rolls up into,
Right.
it lays down when you put the top down, so it looks like a Roadster.
Okay. That's pretty cool. Now, okay, I lost my train of thought again.
This is a 1922 Dodge, and this is a Model T with aftermarket Hassler shock absorbers on it. The front springs on the bottom there, they're Hassler shock absorbers.
And that was aftermarket. Mm-hmm. And did it make it ride a lot better?
Oh yeah, see the original spring is still across there, but the shocks would give it a softer ride. See?
Okay. And I've never really ridden in like the Model Ts, but they had the front shock, or the springs went across the front to where, did it have a little bit of a roll to it when they were running down the road? Or
Not when you run down the road, maybe when you turn in the corner real sharp.
you get a little bit of a roll?
But Ford kept that same springs until the 40s.
Okay. This is just amazing. So how many cars do you have in here without me having to try and count?
I don't know. I didn't count them.
So now I got to make a guess. I bet there's 50 cars in here, 60 cars.
I don't know.
Along with gas pumps and engines sitting in the front and the seats and scooters, tricycles,
I've got
license plates.
I've got about 24 visible gas pumps here in the museum.
Really? Those globes on top are really hard to come by too, from
Some
what
of
I
them are, yeah.
understand.
Up here, these bicycles hanging up here. This fancy one is the only thing that I have in the museum that I know somebody famous owned it.
Okay.
This bicycle belonged to Frank Sinatra and his wife, and that was their personal bike they rode around their property in Palm Springs.
Really? Mm-hmm. And this is a two-seat bike.
Yeah, it's a two-seater.
Bicycle built for two.
Yeah.
Huh. Frank Sinatra. I heard he sang a song or two.
Oh, I think probably a couple more than that.
And you've got several windmills. What, 4 or 5 windmills?
Well, I got 4 right now.
4?
3 here and 1 on the outside back there.
Then you've got an old post office set up that is pretty cool. And the thing that's cool about this, the thing that's really cool about your museum all the way through is that it's so accessible. You've got it set up to where you can see things, you can, I don't know if I want to say handle things, but you can get up close and personal with them. And here in the post office, he's got wanted posters for John Dillinger, for Babyface Nelson, Bonnie and Clyde. So you got all your wanted posters in here, along with the old post office setup, and then you can go around the backside, take your picture from the back like you're the postmaster. But he's got a mannequin over here that's, I guess the post, actually it looks to me more like a car hop. She's got
she's
roller skates and,
She's a car hop I'm trying to convert to a postal employee.
well, I don't know, she might be better as a car hop. And a nice safe roll top desk, potbelly stove in the corner, and then just a lot of machinery, carts for mines, the old saws. What are those saws called?
Buzz saws.
Buzz saws, a trip hammer, a couple of trip hammers.
Well, one trip hammer and a drill press.
Oh, okay. And what are these things that are?
These are welders. That's what I learned how to weld on
Really?
when I was a young man.
Now that's an interesting looking welder. It's probably 3 foot tall, 4 foot tall. It has a dome on the top. It's a cylinder, and the dials are down on the base.
Well, they run on 3-phase. It's got a 3-phase motor, runs a generator, and it makes a DC welder out of it.
Okay.
So it's a very good welder.
And then a whole line of brands. A couple hit and miss motors, cream separators. I mean, just vacuum cleaners that are manual, that are pretty cool. And tons of of hand crank kitchen stuff. I'm sure meat grinders and
Yeah.
flour.
Cherry pitters and cherry pitter.
Wow.
Here's
Oh, and a couple of
down
some
here
more
at the
scales.
bottom. These irons, butter churn, waffle iron, stove, washing machines. These are all salesman samples.
And explain the salesman samples, just
Well,
because I don't know if we've done that before.
In the old days, before they had cars, they'd take all these salesman samples and put them in a wagon, and they'd go from farm to farm and show them what the product looked like, and they could buy them if they wanted to.
Okay, so if
These
you
are
ever see,
miniature size of the originals.
it looks like children's toys,
Yeah.
and you see them quite often in antique stores and stuff. And I've always heard, "Oh, look at these kids' toys," but no, they're salesman samples that you can, like you said, they'd whip them out. They've got pans, they've got everything for that size of stove. Mm-hmm. But it's and they were cast iron too, weren't
Oh
they?
yeah,
The samples
they're
were,
made just
were
like
cast
the
iron.
originals.
Yeah,
and the washing machines, all the parts work in them. They're all working models.
that's just amazing.
And these are all scales, and there's a set of gold scales down there, and all the weights for them.
Wood stoves, like 4 of them, a gas stove, a roll top desk, a bunch of hand pumps, like what you'd put on your counters, and some really cool pictures that are different lightings and stuff of some different vehicles that he has in here. Another big coffee grinder, copper pan, like for doing your long cream separators, cash registers, just all kinds of stuff. Person could go through this thing
I don't know if
over
any
and
property
over and
for
over
sale.
again
Thank you.
and see something new every time. You got another bus back. That's a Dodge bus.
That's a Dodge school bus, made
Amazing.
back in the 30s. You can kind of date them from the grill.
Right. And what kind of motor would that have in
Oh,
it?
I'd have a Dodge six-cylinder.
The six-cylinder.
Inline street, 6.
In this room, we've got old wringer washers, a wood set. That's pretty cool. 2 wood tubs. And then you've got an airplane motor back here, I'm assuming.
That's a Lawrence aircraft engine made during the First World War.
Okay. So that was soon after airplanes were starting to fly.
Right.
It's got the old wood prop on it. It's not in really good shape, but it's there.
This piece of machinery here is a bean cleaner. You sit down and you pedal the pedals, and it makes this conveyor belt come through, and you put your pinto beans in here, and you're sitting here and you're kicking the rocks out of the beans, and then the clean beans go down into a bucket in the back.
Okay. Treadle powered. What are these things?
They had 2 pieces of paper and a carbon copy between them, and you'd run it up
Oh.
there, and then you'd write a receipt and
Okay.
tear it off and give it to them.
And these things would have sat on a counter at a
At a store of any
store.
kind.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Interesting. And then we come back on around and we're back outside with all of the rust-colored Model Ts again. And you got a fire engine down here at the end.
Yeah. It's a 1947 Chevrolet. We used it here in the valley for our volunteer fire department for years.
Okay.
And then we retired it, and it's sitting here.
This is a good place for it to sit. Fits right in.
Yeah.
You got a big cement mixer over here that's trailer pulled.
Yeah.
Another big generator.
This is a portable welder farmer made.
Okay. And down this row you've got wheelbarrows and scales, and there's just so much here. So
This
much.
cement mixer has a hit and miss motor in it that operates it.
Oh, really? We did a podcast at a place in Idaho, Twin Falls, that they were having a hit and miss display that was really quite interesting. It's amazing how little fuel those things
Yeah, they
need
don't
to
mix.
run,
Yeah.
and they just they work and work and work.
And these things here are molds for making cinder blocks.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I guess I kind of wondered how they made them, but I never knew that there were molds. Mm-hmm. So you just pour your cement in and...
Well, the cement has to be fairly dry.
Okay.
supposed to have another side on here.
Right.
And there's a piece of wood fits in here. And you put the dry seam in there and kind of pack it in. Make sure it's good and dry. And then you take it loose like that. Bring her down like this. You grab a hold of wood, and you don't have to touch the wet cement. And you set it aside so it's dry. Put another block of wood and make another one.
Wow.
One at a time.
That is so cool. I always wondered. I mean, they've got a lot of things were made from cinder type blocks back in the 30s and 20s.
Yeah.
All downtowns, and
So they had to have some way to make them.
yeah. I've always kind of wondered, I guess, looking at them, going, boy, they made a bunch of those back in the day. Okay, well, John, I really appreciate you taking us through here,
Okay.
showing me all of your stuff. And we talked about some items. This museum, you could just spend days, I think, walking through, looking at your collection. You spent, what, years? But
33 years.
33 years. And it's just amazing. And I love to see the preservation of the Model Ts and somebody's got the interest to keep them going. When you're done collecting, do you have plans for the collection?
Well, I had 3 kids, and I put it in a trust so that they can't sell it for 20 years.
Well, good. So this place is going to be around for a while.
Hopefully.
That's good. Are any of them interested in taking it over?
Well, you never know for sure.
Okay. This is it's amazing. I'd love to see people's life's work like this. Well, I really appreciate it. Do you guys have a website?
I don't, but somebody put a web page in there for me.
Okay.
But I don't.
And you're kind of a little bit out of the way as far as finding it, but if you Google or put into your maps that you want to come to the Cloud Museum.
If you just Google Cloud Museum, it'll pop up.
Yeah. And it's not hard. Follow the Google instructions. You'll end up here.
It's 10 miles out of Yuma.
And in a little town called Bard. Actually, I think if you were to put in Bard Post Office, it'll bring you a little bit more directly than the way that the GPS brought us in.
Well, my
the
address,
first time I came in.
Our rural mail comes out of the post office in Winter Haven. So you have to put in Winter Haven and 1398 York Road, and it comes right to it.
Okay.
Bard doesn't show up.
It doesn't. Well, when we put it in
Well, it might, I don't know.
we put it in our GPS, and it took the Bard Post Office is only a mile and a half away from here.
Yeah, but if you stop down there a mile and a half, you won't make it to the place.
No, it's real pretty country.
Here's one more thing I'll show you.
Okay, I'm always looking for one more thing.
This here's a Model T with the aftermarket overhead valve setup that they made back in the day for them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
With an overhead valve setup. Mm-hmm. So what did they have to change for that? The head?
Just the head.
Okay. And that was a.
They advertised it in the magazines for more power for your truck.
Okay.
Well, if you want to do a little racing, you need more power, so you put it in the car.
And what about the? I haven't seen any here, but they had track systems set up for these things too.
That's for snowmobiles.
Right.
But there's no snow in this country.
But you still haven't gone to Minnesota and got one?
Well, I haven't been able to find one.
I'll have to keep my eyes open for you.
So what did they do with the original valves? Because they were in the block, right?
Yeah, but it seals them off so it doesn't.
Oh, they just leave them there basically and let them stay closed.
Yeah.
Okay. Huh.
Did you have to put a different camshaft in it too?
No, you didn't do anything. Just put the head on it.
Wow.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And it gives you a lot more power. It runs real healthy. I've had it run. It runs real good. This got a dropped axle, and it's probably for racing.
Huh. That is too cool.
That's how the valves ran off the cam, straight off the cam. There's no.
Well, these here, they put the push rods right through the valve guides down to the.
Well, you said he left the valves in it.
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay.
No, the head seals them off. Well, you can't see it, but the valve guides
I know now.
go right through the valves.
Oh, absolutely. I just couldn't understand how you can get the valve train to work when there's valves already in there.
No,
and then
no.
You run it off the cam,
No,
which is actually directly onto the.
I didn't
valve.
answer that well enough, I
Yeah,
guess.
Okay. You had me going there for a minute.
Wow.
I didn't know they even did that.
There was 3 companies that made overhead valves for Model T Fords.
Really.
This is a roof head, but there was a front neck and there was a,
Was that Thunderbolt back there? Was that one of them?
well, that back there's a Chevy head. And there's a company that still makes adapters to put them on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's amazing how many adaptions and different variations of these things there are. I mean, somebody says they got a Model T, you have a certain vision in your mind, but when you get out here and start looking, you have no idea what they could have.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of home inventions were done at that time because that's the only way they could do it.
Pretty much. Okay, well, we'll shut this down.
All right.
I appreciate your time, and I always finish out my podcast by saying the world is full of wonder. People need to get out and explore
Yeah, that's for sure.
and have an absolutely wonder-filled day.
All the roll and go, where am I to go? Meet Johnny, where am I to go? For I'm a young and a sailor lad, and where am I to go?